The internet is full of creepy, disturbing, and mysterious things. Sometimes they're intended to be scary or unexplained, while others are unintentional, which only makes them even creepier. Number 10. In 2022, an entity some have called the first AI cryptid was created. Her name was Loab, and just why she was so persistently disturbing remains a mystery. Loab was created by writer and filmmaker Steph Maj Swanson, who went by Supercomposite on Twitter, now X. She was one of the early adopters of AI art generation and was experimenting with some programs when she made the creepy discovery. Supercomposite recounted Loab's creation on a thread on Twitter. She was experimenting with negative prompts. This is when you ask an image generator to create something that is as unlike the prompt as possible. In this case, the original prompt was Brando. The first image created looked like a company logo. It created the silhouette of a castle skyline with the words Digita Printix. It didn't mean anything, but was definitely very unlike actor Marlon Brando. Supercomposite then decided to see if the opposite of this image would produce something like Brando. She described the image and asked the AI to produce the opposite of it. 4 images were created, each one showing an older woman with long brown hair and a sad or tired expression. In each of the images, her eyes seemed strange, and in 2, they were clearly defined red triangles on her cheeks. This might have been a form of rosacea. The fact that each of the images was so similar was strange to the creator. Normally, these images would vary in some way, but these all seemed to show the same person. In one of the images, the word Loab was written behind the woman, giving her a name. Supercomposite continued to experiment with the images. She mixed images of Loab with other AI-generated images. The first was from a prompt asking for a hyper-compressed glass tunnel surrounded by angles in the style of Wes Anderson. What came back were some extremely disturbing images, but ones that quite clearly showed Loab. Mixing Loab with other images also continued to retain the key features of the woman. Often, it can be easy for AI-generated images to distort an image of a person, so much so that they no longer resemble the original image. But that wasn't the case this time. But more disturbing was the fact that no matter what image Loab was mixed with, the resulting picture always seemed to be something horrific. The original images of Loab were a little creepy, but it was clear that the AI systems associated her with horror and disturbing imagery, and it kept coming up again and again as new images were generated. Supercomposite next tried mixing these images with other images, and then mixing those as well. Loab's features were retained through multiple generations of the process. At some points, she would disappear, only to come back in later generations. There was something about Loab that the AI latched onto. It wasn't long before people online began to make up stories about the mysterious woman. She was described as some kind of demonic entity inhabiting the AI, or the liminal space of negative prompts. Number 9. A series of strange TikTok videos went viral after a man claimed he was living in an empty apartment building. The creepy phenomenon was dubbed Menu Gate, and even after 3 years, it seemed like exactly what happened is still a mystery. The TikToker in question is an Atlanta-based lawyer named Cody. It started in October of 2021 with a simple video showing Cody walking through the halls of his apartment building. He explained he'd been worried for a while because he never saw any of his neighbors, even though the building was supposed to be full. Now, he seemed to have proof that something strange was going on. On the Friday before the video was taken, someone had delivered menus for a Chinese takeaway restaurant. The menus were stuck into the door frames and would fall to the floor if the doors were open. But when the video was filmed on Sunday, all the menus were still in place. Either nobody came in or out of their apartment for 3 days, or something strange was happening. Commenters were immediately intrigued and gave suggestions about what might be going on. Some thought that this might be part of some money laundering scheme, or that the properties were owned by Airbnb hosts. Cody made more videos and provided more information. He lived in a nice part of Atlanta, a city that already has a housing crisis. The building was good, and Cody thought the rent was fair. According to the building's website, there were only a few apartments available to rent, but he was sure that most of the building was completely empty. One video shows the building's parking lots. The lot for his floor was much more full than he was suggesting, but many of the cars were covered in a thick layer of dust and looked like they'd been abandoned. At least one of the vehicles had a registration that had gone out of date in 2019. The lots of other floors were more empty, and the roof was completely void of cars. This was in a city where parking is at a premium. It was clear there was something strange going on, but it still could have had a mundane explanation. The building was near a university, and some have suggested that the residents might simply have been students who were on break. But most universities are still in session in October, and that wouldn't explain why the phenomenon continued for years. Number 8. It can be easy to fall into disturbing Wikipedia rabbit holes. The encyclopedia hosts articles on the most disturbing events of human history, and changes as we learn more information about the topic of an article. With related articles just one hyperlink away, it can be easy to spend hours exploring some of the most disturbing and strange events in human history. It's this that Neurocracy mimics, as it leads players through a story of gritty crimes and conspiracies. Neurocracy has been called an ARG and hypertext fiction. It's a web-based game, but not one in the traditional sense. ARGs, or alternate reality games, are a type of interactive storytelling, usually based on the internet. The story is set in an alternate world, often one that's in some way more disturbing than our own. Although what exactly the narrative of the story is has to be pieced together by players. In a typical ARG, the creators hide clues like secret codes or hidden messages in various pieces of media, leading to a scavenger hunt across the internet. Like all storytelling formats, different ARGs can differ wildly, but one thing that typically defines this type of storytelling is that it's on the player to figure out what's going on. While many ARGs will provide puzzles and codes across the internet for players to decipher, Neurocracy takes a different approach. The game takes place in 2049, with the entire story told through Omnipedia, a successor to Wikipedia. Shortly before the start of the game, a helicopter was taken down by a hacked security drone. One of Omnipedia's main investors, Chu Xiaoyang, loses his life in the attack. Players are tasked with piecing together the story of what happened to him and who was responsible for the frightening crime, solely through the use of Omnipedia's articles. As the game progressed and new episodes were released, changes would be made to these articles, which were recorded through a revision history, much like the real-world encyclopedia. These articles and their revisions provided clues into the story, as well as revealing some intriguing pieces of world-building, like a game show hosted by an AI. Solving the mystery could feel much the same as falling into a Wikipedia rabbit hole in real life, uncovering new information and connections you didn't know about before, and learning more about our history and the world around us. Just like typical ARGs, there was no player interface other than the Omnipedia articles itself. There's no way to keep progress through the story, and the game's creators recommended having a separate document to make notes and identify clues that would help solve the story. There's a Discord server and forums where players share their theories and clues that they've uncovered while playing the game. Number 7. It's often said that once something is on the internet, it's there forever. But that might not always be the case. There's a great expanse of lost media that was once online, but removed at some point for whatever reason. The most famous of these is Slamfest 99, otherwise known as Super Smash Bros. Live. In 1999, Nintendo was looking for a unique way to market its new fighting game, Super Smash Bros. Strange TV advertisements showing people in character costumes fighting one another. But the fighting wasn't limited to the TV screens. On April 24, 1999, Nintendo of America organized an in-person promotional event for the game at the MGM Grand Adventures theme park in Las Vegas. Booths were set up so people could play the game, and industry journalists were invited. But the main draw was a choreographed wrestling match featuring the 4 characters from the commercials. The match featured Mario, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, and Pikachu facing off in 2 teams. According to eyewitness reports, it started with Donkey Kong attacking Mario, before Yoshi took over to fight the classic Nintendo antagonist. Both Donkey Kong and Pikachu showed off moves that were specific to their characters. At one point, Mario went on a rampage, taking out all 3 of the other performers. The match ended after 17 minutes. All 4 characters went to the corners of the wrestling ring before charging one another. Everyone was knocked out, and the announcer declared the match a draw. Multiple gaming magazines and websites wrote reports of the event, but no footage of the wrestling match has ever emerged. This would be strange enough on its own, but Smashfest was broadcast live online. The broadcast was made through the Golan Harris PR company that helped to organize the event and was featured on a dedicated website. For months afterward, fans were able to re-watch the match, proving it had been recorded in some way. But after a few months, the video was taken offline. In those months, the site wasn't archived through websites like the Wayback Machine, and it seemed to have been lost for good. Starting in 2020, there's been a significant effort to track down any footage of the event. People have contacted those who were involved in the production, and new information has come to light. It emerged that the costumed performers were actually from the Cirque du Soleil, and the announcer's script was inspired by the 1989 movie No Holds Barred. Tragic events that took place just a few days before Slamfest meant Nintendo limited publicity for the event, and only around 100 media outlets knew about it. That made it even less likely that someone who attended in person managed to record the fight. The investigation did uncover new images from Slamfest, and from the making of the TV commercial that used similar costumes. One of the photos seems to be a still from the match, but lacks any of the artifacts that would be present in a 1995 livestream, suggesting it came from a recording that wasn't actually streamed. It's not known if it was possible to download the recorded livestream. If it was, it's possible a Nintendo fan might have the footage on an old hard drive. Even if it wasn't possible, there's still hope a fan might have made a copy in some unofficial way. Number 6. Some of the most disturbing things on the internet have no connection to creepy videos or online horror stories. They're places where real people talk about their most horrifying desires. These might be hidden in some obscure corner of the internet, but the website, Dana Shrine, received enough media attention to put it in the spotlight. Death Note is a popular Japanese anime and manga with a simple premise. The main character finds a notebook of a Shinigami, one that will bring about the demise of anyone whose name is written on its pages. The story has inspired many fans to consider what they would do with such a notebook, and it helped inspire Kachiro Makita to make Dana Shine. The website is a place for Japanese women in loveless marriages to talk about their problems. They can range from serious issues like violence to simple complaints about snoring or money problems. But rather than being a place where these women can come together to support one another in overcoming these problems or escaping the marriage through divorce, the posts have a darker theme. The forums are used like the women's own notebook, with wishes for their husbands to get into horrible accidents and lose their lives. Some of the posts go into a terrifying level of detail about how they wish their husband's final moments to go. Most of these can be read as frustrated vents of women with few other outlets. In the past, there was a stigma against divorce in Japan, and some of these women might still have problems with the process. If divorce isn't an option for whatever reason, they can feel stuck in loveless marriages. The feelings of fear or frustration grow until they form into these dark fantasies, but the posts on Dana Shine are mostly just fantasies. Some women follow up on their posts with stories about the website working. Not long after making their posts, their husbands would get into serious car accidents or have some other medical problem. Rather than feeling terrified that a frustrated rant had turned into something real, they seemed pleased with what they had supposedly done. They thanked whatever spirit had led their husband to his end. A few posts go one step further. Rather than just wishing for or celebrating some horrible tragedy, they take steps to make it happen. This doesn't necessarily involve doing anything illegal, but doing things that they know will make existing health conditions worse, like adding more salt or oil to food. The website is still in operation today, despite media reports on its creepy and disturbing content. Number 5. Gangstalking is a terrifying phenomenon that has managed to spread through the power of the internet. While psychologists and people on the outside might claim that gangstalking is nothing more than a delusion, those who think of themselves as targeted individuals believe they're being targeted by some shadowy organization. The fact that there have been rare instances of actual harassment and stalking campaigns only serves to solidify the delusions. The problem of misinformation on the internet has become well known in recent years. Social media sites and search engines might try to combat this, highlighting trusted sources when researching topics shrouded by misinformation. But that doesn't always work. This is especially the case when like-minded individuals come together in Facebook groups or forums. Anecdotal evidence and opinions are then combined with biased or false articles to reinforce an incorrect belief that can be hard to dislodge. This is one of the ways the internet has allowed conspiracy theories to spread and do significant damage to the offline world. It's how theories of gangstalking have spread. Gangstalking is the belief that someone is being targeted, harassed, and followed by a group of individuals. They might all work for the same company or have been hired by someone the victim has upset. Often, the supposed purpose of gangstalking is to make a victim appear mentally unstable, so that people are less likely to believe what they say. There have been some rare cases where gangstalking is real. For example, in 2019, employees at eBay harassed and stalked a couple in the US who'd been critical of the company in an online newsletter. The couple were threatened online, sent a book about surviving the loss of a spouse, and had a GPS tracking device hidden in their car. But most of the gang-stalking stories described on forums aren't like the eBay case. There's nothing in the way of actual evidence for their claims. Instead, evidence comes in the form of photos of strangers they encounter while still out and about, who they believe are some of those involved in the harassment campaigns. The reasons for being stalked varied. Some thought they were being targeted by former partners or acquaintances that they'd upset at some point. Others pointed to former employers. A popular theory was that victims were part of some government experiment, like the continuation of the infamous MKUltra experiments. Many of the victims claimed to have suffered from mind control on top of stalking. Others thought that the harassment might be of alien origin. Studies showed that more often than not, the supposed victims of gang-stalking campaigns were actually suffering from untreated mental illness. Among other things, they suffered from paranoia and grandiosity. They were ordinary people who had no reason to draw the attention of organizations that would have the means to commit such a widespread campaign. The internet can be a powerful tool, connecting people with the resources to get the help they need. It can also provide community, but unfortunately, that isn't always a benefit. Number 4. The idea that humans are living in a simulation has come up a lot in fiction. Long before computers even existed, philosophers have speculated that we might not be living in a genuine reality. For most people, the idea is nothing more than a fun piece of fiction or a thought experiment. Even if this were a simulation, there would be little that could be done to change that. But in 2017, a Reddit and 4chan user, going by the name of Suki, seemed to believe this wasn't only possible, but necessary. The origins of the Suki project began on the maladaptive dreaming subreddit. The person who had become known as Suki posted about having a world inside of his mind. He called this system space and said it consisted of different dimensions that were coded by other people. The current system we live in was called life, but the system was unstable and needed to be shut down. The poster seemed to be going through some significant mental health problems, and other users reached out to tell him to see a specialist, but Suki didn't respond to this. Not long after, the same individual appeared on 4chan, where he explained his world more thoroughly. The different systems ran on a type of energy called aurora, a finite resource. Life was the system that humanity currently lived in, but it had a faulty code. Restarting the system multiple times had not worked, so plans were made to shut it down. Suki had been sent to the life system to help migrate people from here to a new system, LFE. This was described as being bigger and better, where anything was possible, although it resembled a cyberpunk Tokyo. Migrants had to sign up by July of 2017. After that, they would pass away and their souls would be transferred to LFE. After 150 years, life would be shut down, and anyone still on this system would have their souls lost to the abyss. The 4chan post was met with plenty of skeptics, but also many people who wanted to sign up for the new system. Suki created a website named the Suki Project, where updates were posted and automatic signups could take place. It wasn't long before the Suki Project was being described as a cult. It wasn't clear just how many of those that signed up genuinely believed in this simulation theory, and how many believed this was a game or a work of fiction. Many were drawn in by the promise that the new system would treat everyone like they were important. Forums were made for future migrants, where a sense of community was built. This could be good, especially for those who were isolated in the real world. But it also fostered some negative behaviors, like harassing those who pointed out problems and potentially dangerous ideas. Even though Suki encouraged his followers to spend as much time as possible in life, gathering knowledge and enjoying themselves, some talked about bringing about their demise early, so that they could go to the utopian world of LFE as soon as possible. For many, this was little more than just a dark joke, but for those with existing mental health problems, this promise of a better afterlife could be dangerous. Number 3. Analog horror is a format that has become popular on YouTube and other platforms in recent years. Scary and disturbing stories are told in the format of VHS tapes, infomercials, and other forms of analog media. It gives the story something of a nostalgic feel, even as the horror sets in. Gemini Home Entertainment has been described as one of the best analog horror series on YouTube, and one of the scariest. The series is an anthology of tapes distributed by the titular entertainment company. Each one has a different focus, and many are created by different companies. That means that each short video stands on its own as a piece of horror. Most begin like a typical educational video, teaching about subjects such as normal animals or space. They then take a turn, hinting at something supernatural. They can leave the viewer feeling unsettled, as it's clear there's more to the story than meets the eye. But when put together, each video tells a small part of some cosmic horror. Exactly what's happening in Gemini Home Entertainment is left for the viewer to interpret. In total, there are just under 2 hours of content released on the channel so far, but videos analyzing the channel and trying to put together clues can be much longer. The majority of the story takes place in the 80s and 90s. At some point, scientists realized there was something out of the ordinary in the far reaches of our solar system. Through videos about the planets that orbit our sun, viewers learn of a mysterious 9th planet, sitting between Neptune and Pluto. The planet is a little smaller than Saturn and named the Iris. The Iris is a newcomer in our solar system and has already infected Uranus. It seems to have impacted on Saturn, making the planet's rings narrower. One video also describes Jupiter's Great Red Spot as a wound. Something has been sent from the Iris to Earth. There's a strange alien race, or multiple different species of alien. Just how these species are related to one another is one of the main mysteries that fans of the series have been puzzling over since the series began. Whether one species with different forms, or multiple different types of aliens, it's clear these intruders are hostile to humans. What makes Gemini Home Entertainment stand out from other horror series is a lack of jump scares. Series creator Remy Abodi stated this was something he wanted to avoid. Instead, the tension and uneasiness build throughout the videos, but there's no release. There's simply an ever-growing dread that things are not right, and there's little that humanity can do to change its trajectory. As of this moment, the last video on the channel was published in June of 2023, but Remy Abodi continues to provide updates on their Patreon. Number 2. Ever since it was first invented, Google Translate has been a useful tool. It connects people with information in languages they don't speak, and helps to break through language barriers, but the tool isn't perfect. There are often instances of mistranslations, or the tool not properly picking up tones and other factors of language. But sometimes the website produces something that doesn't seem to be a typical translation error. In May of 2025, a social media user noticed something strange when going through a series of translations. The phrase, "I'm having a wonderful day," was translated into French and then Chinese. The Chinese characters were then copied into the input side of the tool, while the language was still set to French. and then it was translated back to English. The response was disturbing, stating that the Chinese people are in danger. Soon, other people online were finding similar strange anomalies. Messages written using Chinese characters, but being translated from French to English, gave translations that didn't line up with the original text. Many seemed to imply something sinister was happening in China, but others looked like navigation menus from websites or other strange sentences. This wasn't the first time something like this had been detected. In November of 2021, someone started a report on Google Translate's help forums, drawing attention to the issue. The responses assured the user that this wasn't a deliberate attack. It was simply an algorithm mistake, brought about by people not using the tool as it was intended. That didn't explain what was exactly happening, though. One Redditor suggested that the mistake might be from character encodings. Chinese characters are 3 bits, but Latin letters are only 1. Google might be trying to break the Chinese character down into 3 Latin letters, which leads to the mistake. But even if that was the case, it should have only produced gibberish rather than intelligible phrases. In 2017, people on 4chan noticed something similar while using the tool to translate from Somali to English. Users experimented using phrases written in English and then broken down into fragments, so words were at most only made up of 3 letters. They then told Google to translate the phrases from Somalian to English, producing many disturbing results. The phenomenon was dubbed Translategate. Many of the phrases translated to something biblical in nature. In some ways, these might be the easiest to explain. Google Translate works through a machine learning AI. It was fed lots of data and then used that to figure out what user translations are. The original data is often texts that have been translated into multiple languages, but for some languages there aren't many of these Rosetta Stone-like texts. One text that had been translated into these uncommon languages is the Bible. If it was used as one of the few pieces of source data for a language, it might explain why the tool produced religious-sounding phrases while trying to make sense of gibberish. Exactly what happened and why remains a mystery to this day. It's likely a combination of coincidence, selection bias, and possibly some users providing translation suggestions to try to make more creepy translations. Number 1. In April of 2019, a Reddit user posted images of a strange book that they found to the r/RBI subreddit. It kicked off a mystery that would spread across many online and real-world locations and remains unsolved to this day. The first post in the mystery was made by a user calling themselves Sen Junkie Einstein. According to the post, Sen Junkie purchased an old book at a junk store in Fort Mill, South Carolina. The book was Around the World in 2,000 Pictures, a 1956 travel book with a particular focus on the U.S. Inside, Sen Junkie found symbols and codes written in pencil and blue ink, along with coordinates and what looked like diagrams. Around 50 pages had strange markings on them. According to Sen Junkie, the more I look at it, the less I understand. He offered to mail the book to anyone who wanted a closer look, and uploaded images of all the graffitied pages. Sen Junkie had previously tried to get information on the What Is This Thing subreddit, which recommended they post to r/codes. The Redditors there were just as baffled as he was, and little progress was made. The very first page, when opening the book, had plenty of coordinates and annotations to intrigue those who wanted to solve the mystery. One of these was a small box with a cross in the center, in the middle of the first page. 3 arrows point away from the box. One is labeled as 50 Joanna, although Sen Junkie interpreted it as So Joanna, giving a name to the mystery. Redditors on the RBI subreddit were able to solve some of the codes, but it was soon clear this would take more than the comments on a single post to solve. A new subreddit was set up, dedicated to solving the So Joanna mystery. Many different coding systems were used throughout the book. Some of the inscriptions were written in Cherokee. Others were a cipher favored by the Freemasons. Dots written under printed letters, and letters from the Latin alphabet written in some unknown code. Gradually, a list of words began to appear, but online sleuths had no explanation for what these meant. The locations, indicated in the coordinates, were also quickly identified and plotted onto a map. Most of the locations were from the Appalachian region of the U.S. Some had esoteric connections, like the infamous Georgia Guidestones, and a cemetery where Freemason figures were buried. But others were simply universities or fire lookout stations. There was a lull in the investigation until a seemingly unrelated post was made in the r/found papers subreddit in September of 2020. The subreddit is dedicated to posting photos of pieces of paper that have been discarded and found again. Redditor Windy Wendy claimed to have found an old pull tab flyer in North Carolina. The tabs had words and symbols of card suits on them, and the leaflet seemed to be advertising a site named Crossfire Gambit. This was one of the words that had clearly been written in the So Joanna book, and the words on the pull tabs were those that had been decoded. The website featured a list of code words, along with more that were presumably hidden somewhere in the book, all arranged in sections of 13 words each. The discovery reignited the mystery. Another website was found, which featured a photo of the Murphy Pyramid, which sleuths believed was what the box and cross on the first page represented. More code words were found in the image. At some point, it was discovered that a YouTube channel by Ricky McCriston was involved in the mystery. The strange videos included photos of playing cards, which were matched up with words on the Crossfire Gambit site, and provided more codes to be uncovered. One Redditor got in touch with the store where Sen Junkie supposedly purchased the book. The store revealed they'd never had a copy of Around the World in 2,000 photos, but had received a letter with photocopies of pages and more coded information. The So Joanna mystery is still ongoing. There's a lot about the mysterious book that has already been uncovered, but every solved clue only seems to lead to more questions. It seems likely this was part of some kind of alternate reality game, but it was clear that a lot of resources were put into it, especially when people went to the real-world locations and found more clues. The mystery is a fascinating rabbit hole that only seems to get deeper the more that is discovered. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.